My name is Evelyn, and I'm 26. I work as a financial analyst, and until recently, I was living at home with my parents and my younger sister Bethany, who's 23. Let's be real. Living at home wasn't exactly a dream. My parents, well, they relied on me a lot. My dad was laid off from his manufacturing job about a year ago, and my mom only works part-time at a local bookstore. I basically covered all the household expenses: mortgage, utilities, groceries, you name it. They never explicitly asked me, but there was this unspoken assumption that I would handle it, and honestly, I didn't mind. I knew they were struggling, and I wanted to help. Then there's Bethany. Bethany is different. Picture the stereotypical influencer wannabe, spends her days posting selfies on Instagram, shopping for clothes she can't afford, and going out with her friends. She works part-time at a boutique, but it barely covers her expenses. The rest. I suspect mom and dad supplement, but it's never been explicitly stated. She certainly wasn't contributing to the household. I've always been the responsible one, the planner. My dream is to start my own financial consulting business. I've been saving every penny I can, working overtime, and sacrificing things my friends take for granted. Every skipped latte, every delayed vacation, it was all for that future. Then, last Friday, it all went to hell. I was checking my online banking app during my lunch break, just making sure everything was in order, when I saw it. A charge for $200 for a flight to Hawaii? My heart started hammering in my chest. Hawaii. I hadn't booked any flights. I hadn't even looked at flights to Hawaii. I scrolled down further. A luxury hotel reservation for a week, spa treatments, hundreds of dollars at fancy restaurants. It felt like someone had punched me in the gut. This wasn't a small mistake. This was a full-blown, I don't even know what to call it. A theft? A betrayal? My savings were being drained for someone else's lavish vacation. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Okay, Evelyn, think. Who could have done this? The first person who popped into my head was my boyfriend, Caleb. I'd given him access to my credit card information a while back, mainly for emergencies, like if his car broke down or something. Caleb works as a software developer, and he's a pretty level-headed guy, responsible. At least I thought he was. But something felt off. This didn't seem like Caleb. He's not the type to splurge on luxury vacations, especially without talking to me. Then, the realization hit me with the force of a tidal wave. Bethany. My sister has a bad habit of borrowing things without asking. Makeup, clothes, even my car keys sometimes. But this was on a completely different level. This wasn't borrowing. This was stealing. I grabbed my phone and texted her immediately. Me. Bethany, did you use my credit card for a trip to Hawaii? Her response came almost instantly. Bethany. Relax, Evelyn. It's no big deal. Caleb and I just needed a little getaway. I stared at the message, my hands shaking. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My sister didn't just steal my money. She stole my boyfriend too. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I'm numb. I'm angry. I'm devastated. So, last night, I confronted my parents. I was expecting them to be on my side, to be outraged that Bethany had stolen from me and run off with my boyfriend. I was expecting them to be, well, parents. But what I got was infuriating. I sat them down at the dinner table, laid out all the evidence, the credit card charges, Bethany's text message, everything. I tried to keep my voice calm, but I could feel the anger bubbling inside me. Bethany used my credit card to book a trip to Hawaii, I said, trying to keep my voice level. She stole thousands of dollars from me, and she's there with Caleb. My mom just shrugged. Bethany's young, she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. She's just enjoying life. Don't be so hard on her. I couldn't believe my ears. Enjoying life? She stole thousands of dollars from me, and she's sleeping with my boyfriend. My dad chimed in, his tone surprisingly defensive. Maybe you shouldn't have given Caleb access to your card in the first place. You're the one who's responsible for your own finances. I stared at them, speechless. It wasn't just Bethany who had betrayed me. My parents were siding with her, just like they always did. Bethany could do no wrong in their eyes. She was the golden child, the one who could get away with anything. So, you're okay with this? I asked, my voice trembling. You're okay with her stealing from me and sleeping with my boyfriend? My mom sighed. Look, Evelyn, we know it's not ideal, but Bethany's having a hard time right now. She needs this getaway. A hard time? I repeated, incredulous. What about me? I'm the one who's been working my ass off to support this family. I'm the one who's been sacrificing my dreams. And you're telling me that she needs a luxury vacation more than I need my savings? My dad just shook his head. Don't be so dramatic, Evelyn. It's just money. You can always make more. It's not just money, I yelled, finally losing my composure. It's my future. It's everything I've been working for. And it's the principle of the thing. She stole from me. She betrayed me. And you're defending her. The argument went on for another hour, but it was all the same. They refused to acknowledge the severity of Bethany's actions. They kept making excuses for her, minimizing what she had done. I felt like I was talking to a brick wall. Finally, I gave up. I couldn't reason with them. They were too blinded by their love for Bethany. I went to bed that night feeling completely alone, betrayed, heartbroken, and most of all, angry. One thing became crystal clear. I was done being the family's personal bank. If they wanted to defend Bethany, fine. But they were about to see what life was like without my help. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but I know things are going to change. Drastically. This morning, I woke up with a plan. I was tired of being taken for granted. I wasn't going to let Bethany and Caleb get away with this, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let my parents continue to enable them. First things first, damage control. I logged into my banking app and canceled my credit card. Any remaining funds they thought they had access to, gone. Poof. Then I called my bank. I'd like to report unauthorized charges on my credit card, I told the representative, my voice shaking slightly. I believe the card was stolen. Within minutes, the charges were frozen, and the card was officially deactivated. I could only imagine the look on Bethany's face when she found out she couldn't pay for anything else on her little tropical vacation. Revenge? Maybe. But it was also about protecting myself. Next, I made the hardest decision of all. The one that I knew would cause the most chaos. I stopped all payments for the household expenses. No more mortgage payments, no more utilities, no more groceries. If my parents wanted to defend Bethany, they could figure out how to pay for everything themselves. Without me, I spent the next hour meticulously canceling all the automatic payments, making sure everything was shut down. It felt like I was severing a lifeline, cutting myself off from the only family I had ever known. But it also felt liberating. Just as I finished making the last call, my phone buzzed. It was Bethany. I ignored it. Then Caleb's name popped up on my screen. I ignored that too. They could suffer in silence for all I cared. The afternoon was quiet, eerily quiet. I could feel the tension building in the house, like a storm brewing on the horizon. Then it hit. Evelyn! My mom yelled from the living room. The power just got cut off. What's going on? I calmly walked downstairs, trying to hide the smirk on my face. I stopped paying the bills, I said, my voice even. I figured you didn't need my help anymore since you were so supportive of Bethany stealing from me. My dad stood up, his face turning red. What do you mean you stopped paying? How are we supposed to keep the lights on? The mortgage is due next week. I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorway. Figure it out. You've been siding with Bethany, so maybe she can help you. Just then, Bethany burst through the front door, her suitcase dragging behind her. Her sun-kissed skin and beachy waves were the last thing I wanted to see. She threw her suitcase down and stomped toward me. What the hell, Evelyn? You canceled the credit card in the middle of my trip. I had to borrow money from strangers to get home. I smirked. Good. Now you know what it feels like to be stuck without help. Bethany's face twisted in anger. You're being so dramatic. Caleb and I just wanted to have a little fun. I raised an eyebrow. With my money and my boyfriend? She opened her mouth to argue, but before she could, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Caleb. I held up the phone and showed it to her. Oh, look. Your partner in crime is calling. Should I answer? Bethany grabbed the phone and threw it on the couch. Just drop it, okay? It's over. You got your revenge. Now fix this mess with Mom and Dad. Fix it? I laughed. No, Bethany. You're going to fix it. You can start by explaining to Mom and Dad why they're about to lose this house if they don't start paying the bills themselves. My mom clutched her head. Evelyn, please. We can't afford to take on all these expenses. Don't do this to us. Maybe you should have thought about that before you defended Bethany, I said, my voice cold. I've been paying for everything while you all treated me like I was just a walking ATM. I'm done. I'm currently packing my bags. I need to get out of this house. I need some space from my toxic family. I'm not sure where I'm going yet, but I know I can't stay here. Honestly, I'm still not sure if I did the right thing, but I know I couldn't stay in that house any longer. The resentment, the betrayal, it was suffocating me. So I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. As I was dragging my suitcase down the stairs, I spotted Bethany sitting on the couch with her arms crossed. She glared at me. "Where do you think you're going?" she demanded. "To live my life without you all weighing me down," I replied, my voice flat. But before I walked out, I turned around and gave them one last twist of the knife. "Oh, and just so you know," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm, "Caleb tried to contact me earlier. Looks like your little vacation fling wasn't as solid as you thought. Good luck." Then I walked out the door and didn't look back. I drove for hours without a clear destination in mind. I just needed to get away from the mess, away from the constant demands, the silent expectations, the feeling of being used. Eventually, I found myself checking into a cozy motel on the outskirts of a small town. It wasn't luxurious, but it was exactly what I needed. Peace, quiet, and time to think. Sitting on the bed, I stared at my phone. Jake had sent multiple messages, trying to explain himself. Caleb. Evelyn, I know what Bethany did was wrong. I wasn't part of her plan. Caleb, can we meet and talk about this? I miss you. Caleb, please don't shut me out. I rolled my eyes and blocked his number. There was nothing left to talk about. He had chosen to betray me, and now he could deal with the fallout. The next morning, I woke up with a fresh sense of purpose. I wasn't going to let the past keep me stuck. I had spent years dreaming about starting my own consulting business, and now I finally had the time and the remaining money to do it. The savings I'd managed to protect from Bethany and Caleb were mine, and I was going to put them to good use. I drove into the nearest city and rented a small apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I felt free. No parents demanding my money, no sister stealing from me, no boyfriend betraying my trust. I made a list of tasks to get my business off the ground. Find a small office space, register the business name, build a website, reach out to potential clients. Just making the list felt empowering. I could do this. I had spent years managing finances for my family. Now I was finally going to manage something for myself. I spent the next few days working tirelessly, setting up my business, and trying to forget about everything that had happened. It wasn't easy. The memories kept creeping in, the anger still simmered beneath the surface, and the loneliness was sometimes overwhelming. But I kept pushing forward, focusing on my goals and trying to build a new life for myself. I'm starting to feel like I can do this. I know it's going to be a long and difficult road, but I'm determined to make it work. A week later, just as I was settling into my new routine, there was a knock at my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated before opening it. Standing there, looking awkward and embarrassed, was Bethany. My heart sank. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to talk to her. I just wanted her to disappear and leave me alone. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice cold. She looked down at her shoes, avoiding my eyes. "I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I need to talk to you." I crossed my arms. "Make it quick." Bethany stepped inside, her confident, spoiled attitude nowhere to be seen. "Mom and Dad are in serious trouble," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "They haven't paid the mortgage, and the bank is threatening to foreclose on the house. We don't know what to do." I felt a twinge of guilt, but I quickly pushed it away. "That's not my problem anymore," I told myself. "They made their choices, and now they have to live with the consequences." "That's not my problem anymore, Bethany," I said, my voice flat. "You all made it clear that you didn't appreciate my help." "I know," she whispered. "I messed up. I know I betrayed you, and I'm sorry. I thought Caleb really cared about me, but he ghosted me as soon as we got back. I ruined everything, and now I don't know how to fix it." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the pain of seeing my hard-earned savings vanish. The betrayal of knowing my sister and boyfriend had been sneaking around behind my back, and the indifference of my parents when I needed them the most. "You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be okay," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "Actions have consequences, Bethany. I spent years helping you and the family, and all you did was take advantage of me. Now you have to deal with the mess you created." Bethany's eyes filled with tears. "Please, Evelyn, if you don't help, we'll lose the house. Mom and Dad are desperate." I sighed, leaning against the kitchen counter as I thought it through. I wasn't heartless, but I wasn't about to hand over money without some serious conditions. "I'll help you," I said, my voice firm. "On one condition." She nodded eagerly. "Anything." "I'm not giving you or Mom and Dad money directly," I said. "I'll help cover a few of the missed mortgage payments, but only if you all agree to sign a contract saying you'll pay me back with interest." Bethany's face fell. "With interest?" "Yes," I said firmly. "This isn't a free handout. You're going to learn what it means to take responsibility for your actions. If you default on the payments, I'll have the legal right to take over the house entirely. Do you understand?" She hesitated, but after a moment, she nodded. "Okay, we'll sign it. I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing. Maybe I'm just prolonging the inevitable. But I can't stand by and watch them lose everything." The past few days have been a whirlwind. I contacted a lawyer, explained the situation, and had him draw up a legally binding contract. It was cold, calculated, and ruthless. Exactly what I needed. The contract stipulated that I would cover a portion of the outstanding mortgage payments, but in return, my parents and Bethany would have to agree to a strict repayment schedule with a significant interest rate. Furthermore, if they defaulted on any payment, I would have the right to foreclose on the house and take ownership of the property. It was a gamble, I knew, but I wasn't doing it out of the goodness of my heart. I was doing it to protect myself and to teach them a lesson. A week later, the contract was signed. My parents and Bethany were relieved, but I could see the resentment in their eyes. They knew I was holding all the cards, and they didn't like it. I transferred enough money to stop the foreclosure, but I made it clear that this was just a temporary solution. They had to find a way to get back on their feet and start making regular payments. The atmosphere in the house was tense. Bethany was distant and sullen. My parents were walking on eggshells, trying to avoid any confrontation. I felt like an unwelcome guest, a reminder of their failure and their dependence on me. But I didn't care. I had set my terms, and they had agreed to them. Now, they had to live with the consequences. I continued to work on my business, focusing on building my client base and expanding my services. I found a small office space in a co-working facility and started attending networking events. Slowly but surely, things were starting to come together. I was making progress, both personally and professionally, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The contract was a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode. I knew that my parents and Bethany were struggling to make the repayments. I could see the stress in their faces, the desperation in their eyes. It was only a matter of time before they defaulted, and when that happened, I would be ready. Months passed, and the tension in the house continued to build. My parents and Bethany were barely scraping by, working long hours at their low-paying jobs. They resented me for holding the contract over their heads, but they knew they had no other option. I, on the other hand, was thriving. My business was growing, my client base was expanding, and I was finally starting to feel like I was in control of my life. But I couldn't forget about the contract. It was always in the back of my mind, a constant reminder of the betrayal and the resentment that still simmered between me and my family. Then, one day, I received the news I had been waiting for. A letter from my lawyer informing me that my parents and Bethany had defaulted on the repayment schedule. They had missed 3 consecutive payments, and according to the terms of the contract, I was now entitled to foreclose on the house and take ownership of the property. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me. Relief, guilt, satisfaction, and regret. I had known this was coming, but it still felt surreal. I contacted my lawyer and instructed him to proceed with the foreclosure. The legal process took several weeks, but eventually it was done. I was now the legal owner of the house I had grown up in. the house that held so many memories, both good and bad. When I showed up to take possession of the property, Bethany was waiting for me on the porch, her eyes red and swollen. "Please, Evelyn," she begged, her voice trembling. "Don't do this. Don't evict us. We have nowhere else to go." I looked at her, my expression cold and unyielding. "You made your choices, Bethany," I said, my voice flat. "And I made mine." "But this is our home," she cried. "Where are we going to go?" "That's not my problem," I said, turning away. "You should have thought about that before you stole from me and betrayed my trust." I walked into the house, ignoring Bethany's pleas and the tears streaming down her face. The house was empty, stripped of all its personal belongings. My parents had already moved out, leaving only the bare essentials behind. As I stood in the empty living room, surrounded by the ghosts of my past, I felt a sense of emptiness wash over me. I had won, but at what cost? I had gained possession of the house, but I had lost my family. Was it worth it? The days following the foreclosure were strange and surreal. I owned the house, but it didn't feel like my home. It felt like a museum, a relic of a life I had left behind. I spent a few days cleaning it out, sorting through the remnants of my family's past. Old photos, forgotten trinkets, and faded memories. Each item triggered a fresh wave of emotions, a mixture of nostalgia, regret, and anger. I considered renting the house out, but the thought of strangers living in it felt wrong. It was too personal, too intertwined with my past. Finally, I made the decision to sell it. I contacted a real estate agent and put the house on the market. The sale went quickly. The house was in a good location, and the market was hot. Within a few weeks, I had an offer I couldn't refuse. With the house officially sold, I had a significant sum of money in my bank account, more money than I had ever imagined having. The profits from the sale gave me the financial boost I needed to expand my business. I hired a team of talented consultants, leased a larger office space, and started targeting larger clients. Within a year, my business was thriving. I had multiple clients, a growing team, and a life I was proud of. I had finally taken control of my life, and nothing could stop me now. As for Bethany and my parents, they moved into a small, cramped apartment on the other side of town. We weren't on speaking terms anymore, but I heard through mutual acquaintances that they were struggling to make ends meet. Bethany had bounced from job to job, unable to hold down anything for more than a few months. My dad was still unemployed, and my mom was working longer hours at the bookstore. I felt a pang of guilt when I heard about their struggles, but I reminded myself that they had made their choices. They had chosen to betray me and to side with Bethany. Now, they had to live with the consequences. I tried to focus on my own life, on building my business and creating a future for myself. I dated a few people, but nothing serious. I was still guarded, still hesitant to trust anyone. The scars of the past ran deep, and I wasn't sure if I would ever fully heal. Then, one day, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello?" I said, my voice cautious. "Evelyn?" A familiar voice replied. It was Caleb. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't spoken to him since the day I found out about his affair with Bethany. "What do you want, Caleb?" I asked, my voice cold. "I need to talk to you," he said. "Can we meet?" I hesitated. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to rehash the past. But something in his voice made me curious. "Okay," I said finally. "Meet me at the coffee shop on Main Street tomorrow at noon." I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. I wasn't sure what Caleb wanted, but I knew this wasn't going to be easy. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop a few minutes early. I wanted to be prepared, to have my guard up. I spotted Caleb sitting at a table in the corner, looking nervous and uncomfortable. He stood up when he saw me and offered a weak smile. "Evelyn," he said, his voice hesitant. "Thanks for meeting me." "Let's just get this over with," I said, cutting him off. "What do you want, Caleb?" He took a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize," he said, "for everything. For betraying your trust, for hurting you, for being an idiot." I raised an eyebrow. "An apology? That's it. After everything you put me through?" "I know it's not enough," he said. But I wanted you to know that I regret what happened. I was stupid and selfish, and I made a terrible mistake." "You think?" I said sarcastically. "I know," he said, his voice earnest. "I was going through a tough time. My job was stressful, and I was feeling insecure. Bethany was different. She was fun and exciting, and she made me feel good about myself." "So, you slept with my sister?" I said, my voice trembling with anger. "That's your excuse?" "No," he said quickly. "It's not an excuse, it's an explanation. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm not trying to justify it. I just want you to understand why it happened." "I don't care why it happened," I said. "The fact is, you betrayed me. You slept with my sister. You broke my heart." "I know," he said, his voice full of remorse. "And I'm sorry. More sorry than you can imagine. I miss you, Evelyn. I miss our life together. I know I messed up, but I hope that someday you can forgive me." I stared at him, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to believe him, to forgive him and move on. But another part of me was still angry and hurt, unable to let go of the past. "I don't know, Caleb," I said finally. "I need time to think about it." "I understand," he said. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I just wanted you to know how I feel." He stood up to leave, but before he did, he turned back to me. "Evelyn," he said, his voice sincere, "I truly hope that someday we can be friends again." Then he walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The encounter with Caleb left me feeling confused and conflicted. Part of me wanted to forgive him and move on, but another part of me was still angry and hurt, unable to let go of the past. I spent the next few weeks wrestling with my emotions, trying to decide what to do. I talked to my friends, my therapist, and even my business mentor. Everyone had different opinions. Some thought I should give Caleb another chance, while others thought I should cut him out of my life completely. Finally, I realized that the decision was mine and mine alone. I had to do what was best for me, regardless of what anyone else thought. After much soul-searching, I came to the conclusion that I couldn't forgive Caleb. Not fully. The betrayal was too deep, the pain too raw. I knew that if I tried to rekindle our relationship, I would always have doubts and resentments. It would be a constant struggle, and I didn't want to live like that. So, I made the difficult decision to move on, to let go of the past and focus on my future. I sent Caleb a text message, telling him that I appreciated his apology, but that I couldn't see a future for us. I wished him well and asked him not to contact me again. It was hard, but it was the right thing to do. With that chapter of my life finally closed, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I was free to move on, to explore new opportunities, and to create a life that was truly my own. I started traveling, exploring new countries and cultures. I took up new hobbies like painting and hiking. I spent more time with my friends and family, the ones who hadn't betrayed me, of course. Slowly but surely, I started to heal. The pain of the past began to fade, replaced by a sense of hope and optimism. I realized that I was stronger than I thought. I had survived the ultimate betrayal, and I had come out the other side even better than before. I was finally living my best life, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Years have passed since all the drama unfolded. My business is thriving, I've traveled the world, and I've found genuine happiness. I've also learned a lot about myself, about trust, and about the importance of setting boundaries. I hadn't heard from Bethany or my parents in years. I made a conscious decision to cut them out of my life, and I haven't regretted it. Then, a few weeks ago, I received an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "Please read." Intrigued, I opened the email. It was from my mother. She wrote that my father was seriously ill and that he didn't have much time left. She said that he wanted to see me one last time, to ask for my forgiveness. I was shocked. I hadn't spoken to my father in years, and the thought of seeing him again filled me with a mix of emotions. I debated for days whether or not to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore the email and move on with my life, but another part of me felt a sense of obligation, a need to offer closure, if not forgiveness. Finally, I decided to call my mother. The conversation was awkward and strained. She apologized for everything that had happened, acknowledging the pain and hurt they had caused me. She begged me to come visit my father, saying it would mean the world to him. After much deliberation, I agreed to go. A few days later, I found myself standing outside the small apartment where my parents lived. It was a far cry from the house I had grown up in. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. My mother answered, her eyes red and swollen. She ushered me inside, and I saw my father lying in bed, looking frail and weak. He smiled when he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. "Evelyn," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Thank you for coming." I sat down beside him and we talked for hours. We talked about the past, about the mistakes we had made, and about the regrets we both carried. He apologized for betraying me, for siding with Bethany, and for taking me for granted. He said he realized how much I had sacrificed for the family, and that he was deeply sorry for the pain he had caused me. I listened, my heart aching with a mix of sadness and compassion. Finally, he asked for my forgiveness. It was a difficult decision, but I knew what I had to do. "I forgive you, Dad," I said, my voice trembling. "I forgive you." A look of peace washed over his face. He smiled, closed his eyes, and took his last breath. In that moment, I felt a sense of closure that I hadn't thought possible. I had finally let go of the anger and resentment, and I was able to find peace. My father's death reminded me that life is too short to hold on to grudges. It's important to forgive, to let go, and to focus on the present. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I'm ready for it. I'm ready to embrace new challenges, to build new relationships, and to continue living my best life.